Alright, I've been doing a little work on an airboat, and I thought I'd do a quick video on dropping in some drain plug sleeves and flaring them with a drain plug flaring tool. With a twist, of course. Of course, I've got to do overkill and get these extremely close to the bottom. That, of course, meant a slight modification to the tool. But these are pretty simple to use, and the drain plug sleeves are very easy to install. Little hole saw action. I've already kind of got my pilot hole started. I set this very flush so I can line up with the old hole in the hull. Now we're going to try to get it like parallel to the hull in all directions. Oops, hold on. Oh yeah, gonna be a nice snug fit. Put the drain plug through the hole, mark it on the outside, right against the hull. Measure about 1/4 of an inch back. Lay a piece of paper against that 1/4 inch mark. Wrap it all the way around. That will give you a nice, straight, even mark if you can get the paper to line up. Mark that all the way around. Find a socket that just fits inside of the drain plug tube. That way when you clamp it in your vise or you clamp it in your bandsaw, you won't oval the tube. And when you put the socket in there, just make sure you don't put it in there like that and try to saw through it, because it'll take a while to cut through that. And I'm back. And guess what I just did? Put the socket in too deep. Anyway, now all I got to do is deburr it. I used the sander on the outside, and I'm just going to use a deburring tool on the inside edge. Then I'm going to clean it up, scuff it up, put some epoxy around the outside of it, put it in, and flare it. So I have deliberately cut these holes real close to the bottom edge to get the maximum amount of water out of the boat with the plugs out. And I flattened the bottom edge of the drain plug. I'll show you more of this later in the video. This is my specialized tool for getting real close to the bottom edge, made out of a bunch of scraps. And now we come to the outside, and you can see it sticks out about 1/4 of an inch. So because my drain plugs, the distance through the hull is so short, I have to throw a spacer on there. And I could have used anything for a spacer for this. I could have used a stack of washers or a large nut. But since I had the custom-made tool holding the inside end of the drain plug tube, I was able to use the inner flaring tool part as my spacer. Make sure my wrench is still on the back side. And that looks like an awful lot to crimp, but it worked on the other one. Something I'd like to add here is that some people in the videos I watched talked about heating these tubes to make them softer so they flared easier without cracking. Both of these tubes flared fairly easily, and neither one of them showed any sign of cracking at all. You can always clean up the mess later, right? Maybe. you can feel it start to flare. It gets a little bit easier to turn. Not a lot, but a little bit. And of course, I'm videoing this one, so let's hope this works as good as the first one did. Good and tight plus. I think that should do it. Yep, it didn't try to spin when I backed it off, so it's tight enough. Should I clean all that off before it cures up? Take the plug out, or take the tool out rather. I'd say that should work. And that's what the finished product looks like. And that's how easy it is to install drain plug sleeves. If you want to stick around, you can see how I did some of my overkill stuff, how I made the tool to get the drain plug sleeves closer to the bottom of the hull so you drain out every last ounce of water while your boat's sitting around in the backyard, which of course, if we're honest, is where it spends most of its time. Alright, that was the quick drain plug installation part. Now I'm going to go into a little bit of what I did to get them so close to the bottom of the hull. I wanted them close to the bottom of the hull because a lot of times you'll see drain plugs put in and they're 3/8 of an inch off the bottom of the hull. But by getting the drain plug right against the bottom of the hull, this box is my hull, the tool will no longer flare it. As you saw, I actually cut a little bit of the flange off. I used the already flanged part on the inside of the boat because I didn't need to make a flange. All I had to do was find something that would hold the bolt in the center. And that's just some washers and some duct tape inside of a little piece of aluminum that I turned down. If your through the hull plug is long enough, a 1/2 inch drive socket will work, but I didn't have enough room to do that because my drain plug is barely that long. Instead of making this, just use a socket the right size to fit in this, but I couldn't do that because my drain plug is only about 3/8 of an inch longer than this little tube right here, and everything would have bottomed out. But if you got a long enough through hole, maybe you can just use a socket or whatever kind of spacer. That is, if you want to go overkill and make something like that so you can get it right against the bottom. A lot of work for a little bit of results, but hey, it worked. Back to the video. So anyway, after I made that part to hold it on center, and I left a little lip on it so it wouldn't fall down in there. Then I took a large square washer, drilled it out to exactly a 1/2 inch hole, cut it along the edge so that it would end up being against the hull on the bottom edge. So I get my drain plug right down on it. And then I ground out a little bit of clearance here and here for the flare of the fillet of the fiberglass so that that wasn't crushing into the fiberglass and breaking it. Then it's just a matter of bolt through it, bolt through this very gently so I don't knock those little lock washers out of the middle of it that are held in with a wrapper to a duct tape. Real high-tech stuff. And then drop it all in, put the parts on the outside end, and start clamping. Another thing, a little bit of wheel bearing grease, and you can see just a very little wheel bearing grease in the threads and on your washers. On anything that you're using like this, makes it go much easier to turn the bolt, much easier, way more clamping force without as much stress on the threads, and you stand less of a chance of stripping the threads off your bolt or giving yourself a hernia trying to pull the wrench. Anyway, that's my overkill creation for the day, because overkill is what we do here, but it worked. It ain't perfect, but we've hit our target, close enough to perfect. Now I just have to clean up all my toys and put them away. Oh, and if you have a choice of putting drain plugs in your boat, put 1 inch in it. 1 inch drain plug tool is about $22. A 1.25 inch drain plug tool is somewhere in the $40 range. This one already had 1.25 inches in it, so I went back with what it originally had. And how to turn a trailer into a dry dock. All right, like, subscribe, share, leave a comment, and as always, thanks for watching.